All right, welcome to another episode of the Golden Gory Podcast, the bi-weekly MMO show that dives beneath the surface, asks the hard questions, and uncovers how you, the player, can maximize your impact in-game. Our current focus is the upcoming MMORPG from Artcraft Entertainment, Crowfall. This is episode 9, Devs on the Couch. We are broadcasting live Wednesday, March 25th, 2015. We have the normal cast. We have Onrez the Economist. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
We have Lethality the Trademaster. How are you, sir?
Hey, you said normal cast, but you meant abnormal, right?
We're an abnormal cast. And always the wonderful Airwolf, the virtuous hero.
Thank you, and the heroic beard is coming along nicely. Still working on it here. Working on the shape, but feeling good. Excited to be here tonight.
And I am Chief Sarkhan, the completionist. But that is not what you're here for. What you are here for are wonderful special guests from Artcraft Entertainment themselves. We have Todd Coleman, the creative director. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Gordon Walton, the executive producer. Say hello. Tully Ackland, the game designer. He's back there hiding somewhere. There he is. And of course, Thomas Blair, the design lead. How are you folks? Welcome to the show. So with that, let's just dive right in. Mike, why don't you get us started?
Absolutely, guys. We're going to kind of break the questions down into some different sections. What I wanted to do is talk about the Kickstarter first. Now, I know, Todd, today you mentioned in the video that you were kind of surprised that the Kickstarter took off the way it did, and a happy surprise, of course. What do you think it is, and this is something any of you guys can chime in on, what do you think it is about Crowfall that's kind of getting the kind of attention that it's garnered, because it's everywhere right now?
Oh, they're mute.
Yep, they're muted.
The words are so awesome, it doesn't even want to go across the air.
It worked perfect in test.
And that is the answer to your question.
Perfect. Perfectly
Winning
did.
lotto numbers.
He just told me, damn it, he just told me what a thrall is. God damn it. Oh, I missed it.
It's true, raids are coming.
Oh, that's nice.
All right. So, I personally, back to your question, the thing that I think is resonating is when we first came out, like day one, the first thing we said was, hey guys, we're going to create something different. Some of you are going to like it, some of you are going to hate it, some of you are going to love it, but it's really going to be different. And of course, the immediate response to that was, no, it's not. You're going to make a WoW clone. Like everybody was like totally lying, not going to be at all it's going to be the same as everything else, not going to be at all different. And so, then what was funny to us was we of course knew that what we were building, you're going to make a WoW clone. Knew that what we were building really was different. Like it was actually a different game. So for us, it was kind of funny sitting back going, all right, so we've got all these cards to play. Which one do you want to drop on them today? Because at some point, they're going to start to figure out that we're not lying and that we're actually creating something different. And that means at some point, some of them are going to like it and some of them are actually going to hate it. But that's cool. I mean, that was just, we knew that going into it, right? We had to tell the team that too, like, hey, we're going to polarize people. Be ready for that. Be ready that some people are going to be like, whoa, what? You're not doing this? That's all I care about. And we're going to go, yeah, sorry, we're not doing that. So I personally think that's it. There was a core set of people, so a wider than core, like a large segment of people are desperately wanting something different, in my opinion. Like they've just been playing effectively the same game with a different wrapper now for a decade, and they really want something different. Now that what that different thing they want is changes, and it's not the same for everybody. But our bet was that enough people would look at what we were doing and say, yeah, that sounds awesome. It definitely is different, and it's for me. And it looks like, here now at the end, that bet has absolutely paid off. But we didn't know that going into it. That was the big question mark that kept us up, sleepless night.
Yeah, and I think what Todd didn't allude to is there's also a younger audience coming up who never experienced a game like this before or any of these mechanics before. So this is something completely new to them. They have nothing to map it to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I had a conversation recently with a wizard player, and I was like explaining to them an emergent thing that happened. Right, there was this guy in the woods, and he turned around, and the city was on fire, and he ran over here, and he found this other group of players that were in a different guild, and he worked out a deal with them to go. And I explained it, and they just sat there looking at me like I was talking, some foreign alien tongue.
Well, you usually do. I mean,
if your model for playing is WoW or Wizard 101 or something like that, right? The idea that is a thing just makes zero sense to you at all. Okay. So I think that people, when we announced what we were doing, there were a number of people out there who have never forgotten. Like they remember it distinctly, like your first love, and they have never gotten over it. And so they were just ready to have that experience again. Then there was a whole another set out there that was like, well, I'm intrigued, but I really don't know what it is you're talking about, and that's the group that we've been kind of spreading. The word's been spreading from person to person, I think. Because this has been viral, right? We've been doing a cadence of updates and constantly putting out information, but really it's the community has aggregated itself, and that's very satisfying.
Very cool. Very cool. So sort of sticking with the Kickstarter topic there, can you guys, I know it's Kickstarter Eve, right? Tomorrow's the big party and everything. Can you guys give us a sneak peek into your thinking about what you might do for post-Kickstarter funding, if there's any specific kind of add-ons you're thinking about, or will you allow backers to just upgrade their pledges directly?
Sure, I'll take
I was going to say, Gordon,
we're going to be crowdfunding. We're already crowdfunding on our site. We bought up PayPal halfway through the campaign. We've continued and finally got it expanded worldwide. It was a pain in the butt, big time. After the campaign's over, we'll change the packages. We'll still have the same labeled backer packages, but they will be not quite as rich as they were in Kickstarter. And so those will be available really tomorrow morning and ongoing. Over time, we'll add individual items, upgrades. We'll take a few trade-ins on some things that we want back if people want to give them back or they can't use them for some reason. Like if somebody can't come and have dinner with Todd and I, we're going to be happy to trade that in eventually and let them buy something else with that money.
That's cool.
I bet we'll get a lot of takers on that.
Yeah,
actually.
That's our hope.
They're going to take you to Five Guys.
I mean, we like no, we're not.
Nice.
We like going to dinner with people, but a lot of people are never going to make it to Austin.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Well, the sooner, I mean, I think a lot of backers, the sooner you guys can get some add-ons up there, I think we're all looking forward to dropping a little bit here and there and sort of growing our pledge to the next level as soon as we can.
Yeah, Bill and I have a tendency to buy add-ons a lot.
The road to Ruby, we call it.
Yeah, he lead us all down that road. Bill is the guy right there.
Yeah, when you look at the packages after tomorrow, they look kind of small. You're like, hey, where's all this? And it's like, wow, we were really giving away a lot of good stuff on the Kickstarter.
We did it on purpose.
So we're really trying to give back to those who are supporting us at this stage.
Now is the time, definitely.
Yeah. Of course, you want to milk us all for everything we can possibly give you, too.
That's the wrong word.
That's how we talk about it, too, right? We're like, well, let's have another milking meeting.
I'm like,
Your version of fishing, because we're not giving James his kind.
Oh.
Right to the heart, Betty. Well, let's switch it up a little bit now. Let's take it over to Eternal Kingdoms. This has been the hot button topic lately, so the next couple of questions will kind of focus on that. And I wanted to kick it off with what's near and dear to my heart, being the collectionist person. Why would I want to vassal to anyone rather than just collect everything and the taxes for myself? What is the enticement to actually do fealty?
Well, why would you join a guild instead of being a guild? Am I so muted?
Nope, you're good.
Why would I join a guild instead of being the guild leader, right? Because there's other benefits to it. If Blair has an amazing kingdom that gets a lot of traffic and a lot of visibility, and I want to put a shop somewhere, I guess I can put it on my own kingdom, or I can go put it on his. Like, why would I go and rent retail space in downtown Austin when I could just do it at my house? Well, there's a lot of good reasons. I mean, it's hard to iterate through them because there are a lot of social and economic factors at play, right? It's not like I can't give you an answer that's just like, well, if you do that, you're going to get an extra blank.
Right. I mean, for me and my wife, we don't want to build up 2 EKs. So one of us is just going to go to the other one's EK. I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios where it's different for different people.
And there's also a depth of management too, right? If I have a big, economic hub, that's going to take a lot of work, and some people are just not going to be interested in playing that deep. They're not going to want that level of headache, quite frankly. So it's different strokes for different folks, I guess. Is that's the easiest way to explain it. So, and there also are minor game benefits too. Like if you have an artifact in your kingdom that might give me a benefit that I'm particularly interested in that I don't have access to. Okay, well that might be cool. I don't expect that'll be a massive reason, but little reasons like that, or you have access to certain NPCs or whatever. So,
perfect.
Very good. Franklin, did you have a follow up to that, or?
Well, he kind of brought it in there. I was going to ask how the social aspects and the potential bus probably dive into that, but I think he answered that, so I think we could just move on.
Nailed it. So I've got a question about kind of the future of the Eternal Kingdoms. Obviously, speaking to the Kickstarter, there are some robust rewards that we've seen from the Kickstarter packages and the future packages. So let's say somebody missed the Kickstarter, or they didn't pledge in the higher tiers, but eventually they decide they want to work their way up without necessarily having to spend the cash. How would that player eventually catch up with maybe where the Kickstarter backers were that start out with larger kingdoms?
Yeah, so you can build the equivalent of stuff in the game by playing the game and doing resource collection. And so we have exclusive items like the Mountain Citadel is a Kickstarter exclusive. That doesn't mean that there will never be another Mountain Citadel. It means that particular one that we're going to put out is going to be Kickstarter exclusive. You'll be able to, just through gameplay, build your equivalent of that over time. That was always very important to us. So building it and in a way that players can participate, with time, and those who don't, who actually want to spend some money, we were okay with that, but we didn't want them, necessarily getting any benefit out of that, right? We just thought, okay, well, let's give some opportunities here for them to be able to kind of jumpstart, but nothing that would influence the campaigns, nothing that would give them an advantage in terms of the actual competitive area of the game.
Yeah, it's something we hear a lot, and we're very cognizant to the players. And if we're not, they make us aware of their concerns with, concerns or issues with people getting ahead and them not having a fair balance. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we hear about this multiple times in a day, and we're really aware of pretty much every scenario.
So to expand on that, there was a question in the chat that was alluding to that. So for example, I forget which tier, you get a basic keep. How long theoretically would it take to build up to be able to have a keep compared to someone who bought one? Is it a 3-month exercise?
Don't know yet. So that's a question that's like dependent on 4 or 5 layers of economic design.
I knew it was a tough question, but we had to throw it out there.
There's changes, which they will all change. The answer I'd give you would be wrong. So I don't know. We'll have to figure that out.
Forget the most important one. What is the player doing to do it?
Right.
Right. It's
Good
not
point. Good point.
Our design is how much are they playing?
Yeah, and how are they playing, right? If your question is, hey, I want to be a scout that hires myself out to other guilds to go into campaigns for a fee, and I want to build a Mountain Citadel, what's my answer versus, hey, I actually want to build an economic hub, and I'm playing the economic game, and I'm collecting taxes, and I'm forging alliances to get people to come and be tenants, and I'm getting a lot of tax money. Those answers may be dramatically different. So, it's tough.
We have no clue.
Balance, right? So
yeah, very cool. So sticking to the Eternal Kingdoms topic, can you guys talk a little bit about how you envision players like exploring these kingdoms? Like, we know everyone's going to have an Eternal Kingdom, whether they use it to what extent or not, but as a player, how will I sort of pick where to go? It seems like they'll be instanced or set apart from the campaign world. So how will I know where I'd want to go? What kind of items are available there? Where would I want to buy or become a vassal? What sort of systems do you have planned to help players browse these?
Yeah, so that's interesting, because what we did there is we figured out a way to turn that into another reward, right? So we have the idea of relics and artifacts. So the other thing that we talked about doing was not just for those, but for the buildings, adding basically a visibility ranking. And effectively what you do is you play a game of search engine optimization. So if I decide that I want to have a vibrant market, well, then I know I need to collect a lot of X, Y, or Z statues because that's going to increase my visibility, which means other players are going to find me. And rather than just have that be basically like one ladder, we're going to let you do a filtering on it where you can be like, all right, well, I know I can't be the biggest and baddest of the mercantile empires because these guys are really good, but I can be the best world that focuses on Malachi. So I'm going to get a bunch of Malachi temples and Malachi statues and then raise my visibility on that list so that I can use that to attract people. And then I'll specialize in those kind of items because people know that that's a good place to go for Chaos players or whatever. So that's the basic idea we have. It's more goal and philosophy at this point. Like we haven't drilled that down to, okay, let's talk about what the actual filters are and let's balance the visibility. But the basic idea of let's make it an SEO game, we like that. That's a pretty cool idea, right? It's almost effectively a ladder for the economy game, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really cool idea because there's obviously going to be a lot of players that get into that, and they're going to want to compete, and that gives them a field that doesn't even necessarily have to do with their gameplay or anything. They can just be smart about how they build it and show up high in the ranking. So very cool.
And remember it also that my parcels are encapsulated. So if I have a mountain citadel with a bunch of land attached to it, and I'm a duke on Blair's kingdom, and I don't like the way he's treating me lately, or I think his taxes are too high, I can pull that up and I can move it and put it in Tully's world, and now his visibility goes up because
Tully's world confirmed.
Right? So that's an interesting, it makes it to where the piece you talked about earlier of why would I ever swear fealty to somebody else? Well, cut me a good deal, right? Like I have things that I want to do and you can influence that. So it opens up a whole new social dynamic when you have that kind of ability to change allegiances and move things around.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point is we're opening up social mechanics that make sense both up and down. Right, if I'm a monarch, I want a lot of vassals. But if I'm a jerk, I may not get a lot of vassals. So you have to be cool to them and not just treat them like cattle.
Very cool.
Or just be very, very good at treating them.
Or yes,
you have to be an exceptional cattle baron.
Or have something so good that they don't want to leave.
Right. Nice. I think Mike has maybe a follow up to that.
I do. Well, it's related to the EKs. It's related to the system. We talk about the tax-free parcels, and we can definitely see an advantage to that. You've kind of talked about that. How are those going to work going forward? How are players going to be getting those post-Kickstarter, post-fundraising?
They'll still be available for sale. They'll be in the bundles. They're already in the new bundles, which we posted on today, some examples of the new bundles. And eventually we'll sell them unbundled too. Because tax-free is not one of the things you're going to be able to craft in game.
Gotcha. Very good.
Yeah, and when we talked about the crafting, I know we kind of pulled it on our end, and we didn't talk too much about it, was the concept that you could combine parcels into those unique Tetris pieces. So there is a reason to get lots and lots of land because you want to make the cooler shapes.
Yeah, they're more they're more dense. You can do more with them. Basically, the higher level parcel sections are basically, they have more building space and you can pack more tenants onto them so that they become better marketplaces and better crafting areas, things like that. The other thing I was going to mention was, so we call them tax-free parcels because that was easy to explain, right? Like tax-free parcel. Actually, it's technically maintenance free, like the land portion, because if your monarch decides to charge you a tax, we're not saying monarchs can't do that. That's between the players. What we're saying is the system portion of the tax, right? Which is really technically more like a maintenance is what we're removing. But tax-free sounded much cooler than maintenance-free parcels, so that's why we went with that.
Yeah, if Todd wants to charge me 3 chickens a week or 3 chickens a month, I better bring those 3 chickens or he's going to kick me off his world.
Right. So yeah, exactly.
Right. So. And it could be chickens, it could be wood, it could be whatever.
So there's a chicken tax.
There is, in fact, a chicken tax.
Chicken tax confirmed.
That's very
nice. Well, and to kind of pivot on the concept of creating that, trade hub, you guys blew right past the caravans. For a lot of us, it was really the first Kickstarter piece up there that kind of really got some of us econ PvPers really excited. So could you dive into the benefits of forming caravans? Is there a larger inventory space for a caravan run with 5 players than 5 players each with a pack pig each? And what do you see from the concept of the benefits of creating the inherent risk of a caravan versus 5 guys going their own way trying to sneak from A to B?
Yeah, so the caravans to me was actually something that I desperately wanted to have in the core module, right? Like, to me, it was a foundational piece of the vision, but we just couldn't find a way to make it work. So that's why we were like, all right, we're just going to have to kind of dangle this one out there and hope for the best. So yeah, limited inventory space was something that we decided early on was really important. And the reason to do that is because it leads to a whole bunch of emergent gameplay, right? So the idea of, I've got these resources that are spawning the world. The resources make a giant difference on whether I'm going to win or not. But I have to actually transport them. So it's effectively an escort quest and an ambush quest every time these things spawn. And they spawn, they're spawning in large amounts. Like if I'm out collecting rocks or something like that, okay, I guess that helps a little, but really not very much. The quarry produces stone in mass. Like it produces large, what we call materials, which are basically, exponentially more collection of these smaller items. And when you're building castles and structures, you're building with materials. You're not really building with rocks. That would be a pretty pathetic castle. So the idea of having to go somewhere and then escort it, like an escort quest, only with more meat, because it's not predestined that at this spot along the path you're going to be ambushed. It's wherever the other players happen to show up and find you. The idea of moving that stuff across the map to me was really vital, because it opens up, and we can reuse that just in any number of ways, right? To basically facilitate this idea of the game existing at a strategic level. It was something that on Shadowbane we didn't have when we launched, and it was a big problem. And later they actually had to add it, right, to have resources, because without that, your strategy game, I mean, you can still have a game of conquest, but it takes a lot of the strategy out if really it's just about smashing a place and taking it. This to me was a key necessary ingredient to make the strategy game work.
So to pivot off of that, I love what I just heard. The concept of simulated PvP generated escort quests, the old school escort quests. So expanding on that, do you ever see the maybe the possibility or plans to add elements that will allow player created content? Because we've heard the term bounty hunter, but if there's no NPC necessarily quests, are there players setting up bounties, or is there a board that lists the merchants looking for guards for their caravan? Are we seeing the ability to generate player generated content in a PvP environment?
Yeah, so the players are the other content, right?
But I think you're more alluding to like a Swig style system where there's a terminal. Right, that sounds like where you were going with that question.
No. I mean, I wouldn't lead you to make that assumption.
I know my own.
Since you're there, yeah.
Right. And we're not putting in a mission system or anything like that in the beginning. I mean, we're giving the bounty hunter the skills that he would need to find other players. Things like player tracking,
detect hidden.
Right? I mean, there's a swath of skills and powers that go along with that discipline, but there is no formalized system. I put a bounty of 5 chickens on Todd.
Yeah, but what's cool, at least with Shadowbane, was that when there wasn't a system there, in lieu of us creating a system, the players would start to create their own, which was really cool. Like on the forum, somebody would post, I am a bounty hunter, and if you're willing to pay me 5 chickens, I will join your campaign and go hunt people down for you. And, we had player-driven towns that were like, all right, we're declaring ourselves a free city. We're not going to fight anybody, but we're going to fight anyone who tries to fight us. And the second you come within the radius of our city walls, you are safe. And if anybody breaks the peace, we will slaughter them. And that worked. So that was the thing that was really cool about it was it wasn't a bounty hunting system. It was a bounty hunter in the actual sense of the word of he pays me the chickens and I go hunt the guy down and kill him. And so that's really cool. It feels better too. It just feels a lot more interesting and dynamic.
So to expand on that piece, from a caravan's A to B, you're giving player-generated content there. How do you see the benefits of people who would come to the aid of the caravan if they're not necessarily directly benefiting from the merchant saying, "Hey, I'm going to hire me 4 guys to protect my caravan," and the replacement being is, what is, besides the loot, is there any direct benefit for the teams to really focus on keeping caravans from being successful?
Well, it's the social elements, right? I mean, obviously, if you're making caravans, those are probably people who you're going to want to be nice to. Right. You're going to remember the dude who stood over there and watched you get ganked and then came over to join in the spoils, right? I mean, you write those people's names down, you put on the wall, do not serve, right? Kind of. We forget a lot of these social elements because we've been so dealed on quests and missions that tell us exactly what to do, and here's your little reward. Here's a couple gold, here's some XP. We've really forgotten a lot of these social systems and the emerging gameplay that arises from us just giving the players the tools.
So we were talking about this because, if the resources in our game come from the campaigns, which they do, and a gold farming outfit decides to go into one of the campaigns and farm, they go to a quarry, they get a bunch of stuff, they're carting across the map, they get ambushed and killed. Are they really gold farmers at that point, or are they just players? Right? I mean, that's if they're actually having to participate and take risk, it changes the dynamic. If I hire some players for chickens to follow my caravan just to protect me, and halfway through they turn on me, betray me, and take all the stuff, including the chickens, that's just gameplay. Like, it's all of a sudden those dynamics. I can't write quests as good as that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can, but most people can't.
And it would probably be buggy as all get out.
Nice.
I mean, it would always break when the bandits spawned or something like that, right? I mean, it's just...
Yeah. So I had to add this one just because I'm such a lurker on the goals of, the stretch goals. So I noticed at 16,000 backers, the level includes the phrase, yada, yada, slot into your forge that grants access to improve your crafting. Could you feel like explaining this slot mechanic? Because I'm feeling like the word thrall is almost like the word thrall is like the word smurf. It's the smurf that goes into the smurf. So are you saying that thralls are possible NPCs, possible used in weapons, and I can actually put thralls to gain benefit into items and buildings I create?
First, I never thought of a smurf and a thrall in the same neurons.
They are both blue.
Yeah, I guess that art that we do have, they are blue.
They are
wigging me out.
So real quick, let me back up to the beginning of your question before you segued into the what the hell is the thrall question, which I know is the one you really want to ask. So to the first question, which is the thralls themselves. Wait a second. Hold on, give me your question again, because you sidetracked me with your actual question.
What's the deal with socketing, though?
Okay, the socketing. Yeah. Okay, so if you were a Shadowbane player, you wouldn't ask that question, because Shadowbane, you collected NPCs and you slotted them into your buildings. So the buildings had a set number of slots, and the type of building determined the type of NPC you could slot into it. So if I had a forge, I'd put a blacksmith in it. If I had a barracks, I'd put a captain of the guards in it. And then the slot and the NPC that was slotted into it, that determined the type of thing that it did. Like, if it was a blacksmith, I could then order items up from him and he would go off and produce them. If it was a barracks, I could order that captain of the guard to spawn a certain number of a certain type of guard, and the archers or whatever would go patrol. So that was the first part, which was what's the deal with the slotting? So the deal with the slotting is I didn't explain it because I forget that all of our players weren't Shadowbane players.
Right.
And so I tend to, even here, I'm like, no, you remember like the thing. And they're like, we didn't play that game. I don't know what you're talking about. So, okay, so the second part of your question, which is what the hell are thralls? We're using thrall as a generic term right now for all of these kind of spawning ghost NPCs. And yes, we do intend to have them have different purposes in the game. So we wanted to have different uses where I could find a forge master and I could take him back and I could use him to help me in my crafting. I could find a blade master and I could use him to help me with my training. I could find some other use for any of them, which was kind of a safety net for, well, what if I don't want that particular thing? Which was being able to bind them as additives into your crafting as enchantments.
Yeah.
We just kind of liked that idea too. It was a very Elric Moorcock idea of being able to take the spirit and bind it into an item. And it's like this katana actually has a blade master in it. That's just cool, So anyway, there's my kind of generic answer.
And he talks to you every now and then too. That was kind of
I love that. Yeah,
Nice.
He might whisper.
That's debatable.
Well, that was a Smurfy answer, guys. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for
Howdy,
that.
Smuffy. Which is a perfect segue into the next part of that econ conversation is the NPC vendors. They sound like they're going to be these thralls that you can also find or
Yes.
create.
Yeah, same deal. You basically find the ghost and say, "Hey, just stand here and sell this stuff for me." And he's like, "All right, I'll do that. That sounds great."
So
It's
we
fantastic.
understand that currency is only resources, or you also said there's time purchased time cards. Plex
Yeah, okay,
system,
so
whatever.
those are two different currencies. But yeah, there's a currency that you can use for game time. And then internally within the game, there's resources. So we're probably going to have some way of pressing resources into something that's more carryable and more mutable.
Right.
We just haven't gotten into it yet. And it may be as simple as metallics can be pressed into coins, and by doing so, they become stackable resources that take up less inventory space. And the purpose there is primarily to act as a currency, even though it's not a traditional MMO currency like I have 65,452 gold, instead it would be gold stacks. But this is an area that's still being debated, so normally when you guys push on these and you don't get an answer, it's because we're still arguing internally.
Right.
And we like to at least
Good.
get on some semblance of the same page before we come out and say to the users, that way we're not actually like, these users are right and those users are wrong. No, those users are wrong, and we don't like to do that. We don't like to argue in front of the kids. That's not good.
Or we like to write it down so we know what we're talking about because we do things like this all the time.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason why I was asking was more towards those NPC vendors and how we could manage that. And so you've answered the question. You still don't know, but there's something being worked on, and that's perfect. For us, that's all we needed to understand because
the goals of the system though. So we can't have a system where I put a slotted NPC vendor, a thrall vendor, and say, "Hey, I want you to trade this sword, but I want you to sell it for 5 chickens, or I want you to sell it for 34, or I'm also I'm interested but not totally interested in this, so I want to see the color first." So that's not going to work, right? So we'll have some mechanism to create a baseline. I think that the key that we were trying to say early on is we don't want gold to be some mythical, non-inventory existent currency that simply floats in outer space.
Yeah, there is no currency tab. It is an inventory object.
Right, that's what we were going for.
That puts it at risk, right? I mean, that's one of the big points of that system.
right,
Nice.
because we love the barter system, and when you say resources is your only currency, that drives the barter and makes the players the game, right?
Well, it's interesting because it means people that generally don't have an interest in things like harvesting and getting resources, if they see a pile of gold, they might go grab it out of the earth, right? I mean, it opens up gameplay to people who may have not even considered that as a viable thing before.
Well, and that was leading into the next part. Well, if you're not interested in the harvesting and resources is the currency, how do those that want to only focus on a certain type of gameplay, PvP being the most loudest example, how do they even do anything in the market, right? So
They smash them and take their gold.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
Other from
carry
players,
gold,
right?
I carry gold on me all the time, so all I have to do is wait for someone to kill me and take the hard-pressed gold that I made. Lo and behold, you've harvested
Right. At some
currency.
point, you're going to want to put
Yes.
that in your embargo to get it out of that world. I mean, it's not like you just put it in this little safe spot and it's safe there forever, right? I mean, there is a different thought process here between your traditional MMO and where we're going. So to get that to a spot where you can take it out of that world, you're going to have to put it at risk, right? The constant risk versus reward, I have it, it's mine, really isn't always true, right? Because someone could hit you in the back of the head and take all your gold.
Did was it ever talked about real quick that once it's in the embargo slot, is it safe then? I mean, you may not get it in the end, but in the
that's right. It's safe at that point, except that you might not get it at the end. So it's now safe from the players directly. It is not safe from the system. It's not safe indirectly because you still now have to win.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes it out of play, which creates that really interesting early on question of, do I fix this wall? Do I keep this for myself? Because I really want those upgrades in my EK after this campaign is over.
Very cool. Very cool.
So I think we should move on to campaigns unless anybody else has got an econ question.
No,
Jump
take
in,
it away,
Mike.
Mike.
All right, so moving on to the subject of campaigns, guys, there are some players, and you've mentioned this, that don't really have any interest at all in the Eternal Kingdoms, and you've talked about that's totally okay. If somebody doesn't want to focus on their EK, they could just go play the campaigns and be fine.
Yep.
For those players that want to just do the campaigns, if the incentive to win the campaigns is to be able to haul stuff back to a place they don't care about, what's that player's incentive to win? And again, this is a different mode of thinking than a lot of people, because some people even look at me crazy when I ask that question. They're like, we just want to play. But I'm curious what your stance is on that.
It is a tough question, right? Because you're saying, so for a guy who doesn't want to be married, why would he possibly get married? Well, okay, you just kind of answered your question. So that's why the tournament system was necessary, right? Because at the end of the day, we needed some other mechanism for them to have weight and merit to the campaigns. And the answer there is really bragging rights. It's knowing that I'm the best. Now, if you say, hey, I've got a guy who has zero interest in the campaigns, zero interest in the EK, and no interest in tournaments, now what's the game? What's in the game for him? I really don't have an answer to that question.
Right.
Like at that point now, this game may not be for you. Yeah, that's you. that's the one. So
Right, but I mean, you also there's a lot of different player types, right? And I mean, a lot of people just don't need that item at the end. They get happy seeing their name on a leaderboard. They get happy at being the best and learning the best way to play a class and just ganking somebody, right? I mean, that's for that type of player, that is their reward, right? They don't need I got resources, I got a bigger EK, that whole little chain that motivates a lot of other people. So it's finding the right motivation for the right person.
Well, can we expand on the leaderboard thing? Because that brings interesting questions. If the different play styles is you're a scout and all you're doing is scouting, and the leaderboard may be about killing or how much resources, I mean, how does the leaderboard truly capture the different type of play styles and have meaning to those people that aren't necessarily interested in the kill, but they are interested in the campaign and winning? There's so many categories there.
Yeah, the first round of leaderboards is going to be guild and team based, right? It's not going to be individual based. That's what we have to do first. So that person being a scout is going to be a scout to the betterment of the team to try and make the team win. So the level deeper than that, we're actually like, okay, now let's try and recognize individual contributors. We've talked about that some, but to be honest, that feels to me like a design question that is kind of 4 sigmas out.
Yeah.
Like it's another one that I don't feel like we could answer right now. So I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it. This just design wise, I have a tendency to start feeling nervous when I feel like I'm basing things on assumptions that are based on assumptions that are based on assumptions. And at some point, I just have a gut feeling that I'm on shaky enough ground. I know I'm wasting time. Like once I find out, once the fog of war goes back from here to here to here, and now I can see, I'm going to end up making a different decision anyway. So at that point, you're kind of just, And
I think our problem is a lot bigger because in your traditional MMO, they pretty much drill it down to damage, healing, objectives taken, and that's kind of your leaderboards. But we have all of these social elements going on. How do we reward Onres for making 700 swords that won us that campaign? Right? I mean, there's all kinds of different things we have to look at, and it's more than just those basic 4. Right?
Yeah, and especially if I charged you for those. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I do realize that would bring me down in the leaderboard if I sold you the 700 versus gave you those.
But you figuring out how to make a cool floor in the fortress to keep out those sneaky Ganetians may have won us this keep, right? How do I reward you for that? For keeping the walls in shape? I mean, there's all kinds of different angles that we can look at this at. That's why we're starting with teams off the bat.
Yeah, we're starting with one that's not so daunting that we know how to approach it, right? There are some of those questions that are like, that is really weird. We're going to have to wait on that. We're just not there yet.
Right, and when we see the gameplay, I mean, a lot of these things will just kind of fall out like, oh, this is what they do. Well, let's reward them for that, right? So...
Well, and it's nice at least to hear right up front. I mean, you're focusing more on the leaderboards being team-oriented, which I think drives home more of the strategic philosophy of the game, more so than the individual going out and killing 500 people but still lost the campaign. So,
yeah, cool. So I sort of a follow-up to that, and I was actually struggling whether this was a campaign question or an Eternal Kingdom question, but just what you said in the context of talking about leaderboards, so we know that the campaign lengths that have been talked about are sort of anywhere from a month to 6 months or something like that. That is, so this is kind of 2 parts. That's kind of longer than in a typical any kind of known PvP match, as we might consider them, right?
Right.
So how, given the leaderboards and all that, and this, my actual question had to do with building up the Eternal Kingdoms, which is why I've got it here, is when you're away from that for so long, how will players really focus on, and I think you guys have said that you may be able to transport back to your Eternal Kingdom during the campaigns, but you can't bring anything new back with you. So
Correct.
we've got 1 or 3 month or 6 month chunks of not being able to progress that or see a rank rise on a leaderboard. Is that going to, have you guys thought about that? What is that going to be like for players?
Well, you can still progress your Eternal Kingdom. The key is you can't move stuff freely between the kingdom and the campaign. So if you go back to the kingdom, there's the whole social dynamic of working with other people to try and improve your kingdom. So that's still a viable option,
Right.
And
there is multiple characters that you may want to jump on, but I mean, where was I going with this one?
Well, all your characters aren't in sync in the same, most likely in the same campaign worlds.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
So you've got multiple characters.
If you were to go back to a campaign, that's the thing. If you're in a campaign world and you go back to your Eternal Kingdom, how much are you hurting your team or helping yourself if you're not in the campaign that you're in?
That I guess depends on how good you are and how crucial you are.
Right.
So if it's in the middle of a seats window and you're like, guys, I'm out. I'm going to go back because I'm going to hang out with my girlfriend. She's in the Eternal Kingdom right now.
I'm going home, guys.
With
See ya.
her, you're kind of screwing your team, which is probably what I would do. Don't tell my wife about my girlfriend.
Yeah.
You must be in the room.
Just kidding, honey. Who's probably not watching anyway.
Yeah. I know mine is, so I'll get critiques afterwards. But anyways, I think that the mental model that a lot of people are making for the campaigns is a little different because they're trying to map it to what they've seen in Guild Wars 2 or a WoW Battleground, for example, where you jump in and, hey, there's a mini-map, you know the objectives. Imagine jumping into a Crowfall campaign, you got stuck in a random spot in the map, you're naked, the first thing you need to do is link up with your team, right? The mini-map is all fog, you have no clue, you have to find your way. So the initial series of tasks is, how do I survive in this place? Oh crap, there's a wolf over there, I don't have any stuff yet, I don't know where my buddy Todd is, we have to figure it out and link up. We have to clear this ruins out of bad guys to start building our base in this campaign. I mean, these kinds of things, when you think of a typical 45-minute battleground, we're talking scopes of days before we have our base online, operational, stuff's flowing. Our scouts have revealed the fog of war on the map. They've brought that back for the team. It's not. It really isn't just plopping into a battleground. Here's a mini map. We know what to go do. We have to find those cool POIs. Oh, there's a quarry over there. We got to get that thing and start getting that stone back here. I mean, so the length of time in these things may be too short when you look at that, right?
It's funny because you're totally right. I think people use the wrong mental model. A better model, as weird as it sounds, is actually Civilization, right?
Yeah.
Civilization is actually not just one game. It is a series of different games. The first time I come in and I got that one little settler unit surrounded by black, right, and I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing, feels dramatically different than I just built my first nuke and I've got all my railroads set up. And
Right.
it almost feels like a different game.
Yeah.
So my suspicion is that we're going to have the same kind of thing, but we don't know. Again, that's part of the challenge here is we're not just basing this on something that somebody has done before. It's a new... It's a new idea, and that means that some of these ideas we're going to work great. Some of them aren't going to work, and we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. This is going to be an exploration process. The building of the game very much will be an exploration process as well.
But you kind of see where we're coming from.
So exciting,
Yeah.
Right? I think it's not a battleground where you drop in and there's gates and you're waiting for the gates to rise and you bum rush out to an objective, right? I mean, there's going to be a bunch of exploration in the beginning to figure out what the map even looks like, right? And day 7, some new people may drop in. I mean, it's just, there will be people appearing. Oh, so in some campaigns, your experiences will be different, right? You didn't start off with there being no base. Oh, I joined a campaign that Airwolf was in because he said it was really cool, and the base is already set up. So, again, it will be different every time.
I think that's cool. That helps a lot. Myself and probably a lot of others thinking of it, just expanding our thought about what a campaign means. And you've always used the term campaign. It's not a battleground. It's not a match. It's not any of those. It's going to be its own thing, and that's what's cool. Just real quick follow up, and then Mike. I think we'll go to Mike. is there the concept then of, a typical MMO play session? Is there a thing as downtime? I know we're not going to have on-res fishing, but what kinds of, is there such a thing as downtime? Are there things you do, or is it always look to fight and craft and gather, or what would that be like?
There was I'm using Shadowbane again as the model. It was peaks and troughs. You had uptime, you had downtime, and the real, you had a lot of, basically, you had time back in your city where you were kind of dealing with building the city, your forge, building items, stuff like that. Then you had what was really, I call raiding, but it's not like PvE style raiding. It's more, hey, we know that there's a good monster spawn over there where players go and they try and get gold, so let's go kill those players. Let's go hide there and ambush somebody and take all the gold they just collected. So that was more of an ad hoc small party system of let's go on foraging parties out and ambush whoever we can find. And then you had the sieges, which were a handshake of, okay, this Thursday, we're going to be sieging you. All right, okay, well then, we're going to make it happen at 8 o'clock. Okay, sounds good, we'll see you then. So we had kind of the multiple layers of how those activities would happen.
Right.
I'm expecting it'll be the same thing here. I mean, that's...
Yeah, you're going to want to work on your the next series of swords or whatever, right? So you're going to get a harvesting party to go out, you're going to need a couple people to guard you, and you go out and you look for silver or gold or whatever you're looking for. So you have all of this build-up gameplay to get to the siege, right? I mean, so there's lots of activities to do outside of just banging on someone's walls.
Cool. Very cool. Cool. Mike, you want to take it?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of us will be doing a particular thing quite frequently in game. I expect this will happen to me a lot, and that is dying. A lot of dying. And we've heard about graveyards, and those of us that aren't familiar with maybe systems like this, how do graveyards work with dying? Does that affect where I respawn? Talk to us a little bit about how, what happens to me when I die. Do I have to start over from square one? And I know some of the rule sets will adjust this, but fill us in a little bit, if you could, about what's it going to be like when a player dies, and are there things that teams can do in the game to make it so it's not quite as painful, I guess.
I mean, we've talked a lot about this, but a lot of it is based on the rule set, right? Do you drop all of your items? Do you bounce back to a bind spot? Has the bind spot been taken over by the other team, so you fall back to an even further back one? Or are you a archetype that has an ability to mark a temporary bind spot?
Respawn spot.
Right, respawn spot near the front lines. I mean, there's many angles to take this one from.
Yeah.
I mean,
so the basics at the highest level is that the looting rules and the decay rules and the drop rules will definitely change campaign to campaign, and we are doing a respawn system between one of multiple points, and not a ghost or spirit type system like UO. So I mean that's the basics. Beyond that, we're going to have to play with the rules quite a bit, and we've got a bunch of different ideas that we want to try.
Yeah, I mean the nuances of do you have a res sickness or anything of that, we really haven't gotten to that kind of low level yet.
Sure. Now,
more the strategic level where we're thinking about we just don't want people bind rushing walls, right? That's one of the things that we're trying to. That's where we're looking at it from, not the do you start with 35% less stats after I die kind of thing.
So a player dies and they lose, some of their gear, some of their items. I know there are people that are coming from a lot of different games where that's kind of scary for them a little bit. They're open to the idea, but the items, how powerful are items, and how big a deal is it if I lose a sword or lose a shield or lose a shoulder? Lose what's in my bag. I mean, how big a deal is that? I mean, I suppose like some of the stories we've heard from Eve, that could be inconsequential or it could be really huge.
It depends upon where you are in the campaign, too.
Yeah.
It does, but I will say it's not. It's going to lead on that spectrum closer to inconsequential than it is like truly impacting. We don't have the idea of that one great helmet that I've been spending the last 6 months to go get. It just doesn't. The game is. I mean, think about death in Minecraft, for example, right? The items are pretty easy come, easy go. They all have decay. And so while certainly, I found that amazing, right, playing Minecraft because it's so popular with such a younger demographic, and yet the item has full item decay and loss on death, right? That's most MMO players would be like, whoa, I can't believe you're doing that to me. Yet 8-year-olds are like, yeah, whatever. They're totally cool with it. So to me, it's part of a mix, right? It's all these systems have to work together to tell you the actual feeling. It's very easy for somebody to say, I'm just going to take this one element out and say, oh, I don't like this, and therefore the whole game's going to suck.
Right.
And that's just not the way these things work, right? Any more than you can say, like, I hate cello, or I hate cilantro, or
Right.
whatever. It's about the mix.
And
some people do hate cello.
They definitely do. There is
and valid.
We don't like naked fighting either, right? So
yeah.
it can't be so inconsequential that it means that people are running around naked fighting, right? Gear will be important, but it won't be, I hit you with my mega hammer of death and one-shot a bunch of people around me.
Right.
Because that's just no fun to anybody.
Well, it's fun for that guy.
Well, again, Uncle Bob.
For very long.
I guess it's fun for me then, huh? Let me go get my helmet.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important that even though you become naked in the non-naked sense, death having some kind of penalty is important to the strategy of the game,
yes,
or people are just going to keep face rolling death over and over and over again and just think it's no big deal.
That is an old quote of mine from Shadowbane, actually, is I got quoted saying death needs to have some sting, and I still believe that that's true.
Excellent.
Amen. So, all right, so I've got a question. Now, the people that know me are probably going to be shocked that I'm going to ask this, but I'm asking it for the benefit of them, as well as folks that are paying attention to the Kickstarter. How will a solo-minded player approach Crowfall?
Well, there's not one solo-minded player, right? So first of all, that's there's I can think of a dozen different kind of play styles that could still be considered solo players. My guess is that initially the first thing they'll do is, like anybody else, they'll explore their own eternal kingdom, because that's how they're just going to learn the ropes of the game. And a lot of the reason I know people are like, well, why does everybody have a kingdom? Well, because I don't want to drop you day one into a campaign. You'll die and then you'll quit.
This is awful.
I could put a beautiful tutorial together, and the day after we have it done, we could spend man-years on it, and the first request we're going to get is, I want to skip tutorial button. And then we're going to put in the skip tutorial button, and then everybody's going to come in, hit skip tutorial, die immediately, and say this game sucks. That happens every single time, right? So that, I think that kind of initial area where you can let people at least get their legs, how does this game basically work?
Right.
That's kind of an important piece that we need to have. Once I get in and I've now established in the game, I know how combat works, I know how exploration works, I know how crafting works, I know how the basic model of building and fighting and collecting and harvesting, I know all that stuff. Now it's a question of, okay, what role do I want to play? So if I'm more crafting oriented, I may decide not to go to the campaigns. I may stay in my eternal kingdom, and then what'll probably happen is I'll go off to visit another kingdom for trade purposes, and I'll see this big kick-ass kingdom, and I'll be like, man, this is really cool. And that'll either make them say, I want to join this place, or I want to build this place. And at that point now, you've got a whole line, because effectively what just happened is they just wrote themselves a quest, right? And that quest may be a long-term quest, but they'll break it down into a series of quests. But effectively, they just wrote themselves a quest. Or they may find that combat is really cool, it's really fun, and they may say, okay, I need to go and try a campaign out. So they'll go. My guess is, unless they're part of a guild, if they're part of a guild, this is that branching structure. Remember I mentioned there were like 18 different ways to skin this? I'm now walking the branches for you. Sorry, you asked. So if they're in a guild, then they're going to say, hey, guild, where are we right now? And then that's going to determine what role they play, because they're going to drop in, and depending on what time of the campaign it is in terms of seasons, that's going to determine whether they can find those people and what they have to do. If they're not part of a guild, then most likely I would imagine they will drop into one of the faction-based worlds, either the 3-faction or now the 12-faction.
And they will help them.
And then that's going to determine their gameplay. So it's a series of channels that I think they'll kind of flow into. And very different than WoW or Wizard, we have to be okay with the fact that occasionally players will flow into the wrong channel, and they're going to have to figure that out, right? And I used to be a lot more terrified about that, but again, Minecraft is another one of those. It's another thing that it showed me is the players can kind of figure it out if you let them, and as long as they're engaged and having fun, they don't mind losing and having setbacks, right? That's okay. They can get over that. Again, 8 to 12-year-olds really into Minecraft, and it's fairly brutal at times. So
you get dropped on a beach and there's no instructions.
Yeah, and
you
then
start punching trees.
Night
right?
comes and you die. You know, and you got I guess I got to dig a hole and put myself in it. I feel like that game actually taught me quite a bit in terms of being willing to take the training wheels off for the players, which is funny to say as the guy who was creative director of Shadowbane, right? Because I was already pretty there, but I've had now 10 years of doing the opposite. You know, I went and did Wizard and Pirate, which was all about put the player on rails and control every moment of the game experience.
Because we didn't trust the social net anymore. I think, again, this is part of a thing of games going away from the social net, that the social net will catch you at some point, and you're like, hey, how can I help? And someone will in fact help you. When players get used to just queuing for things, they forget that there's this whole social element going on in the background.
And the problem is when you kill that, you also kill all the benefits too. Now when I say I want to go on a dungeon raid and it randomly puts me together with a couple other people, the moment that thing's over, I never see those guys again. There's no social bond at all. Right? Something incredibly cool was lost along the way, and it was lost because it didn't scale is really the problem, right? If you're trying to build a game that you want to go and capture millions and millions of players, you have to put it more tightly confined. You're like, well, I need to guarantee at least 4.3 units of fun per hour for every player. And the way you do that is you trim off the top, and it's like Valium. You trim off the peaks and you trim off the troughs. You have to kind of put them into this little zone. So,
yeah, good answer.
Very good, guys. Probably have time for one more question. I know we're coming real close to end of time. You mentioned that you know, as we learn about combat, you mentioned that, and I know you've talked about this a little bit. I know there are some viewers that do wonder about where combat is going. We've seen kind of the early test demo, and you guys have been very clear. What you showed is kind of the early demo with the telegraphs and the split body. Walk us through kind of the process. Where's combat now, and where do you see it going as far as combat style? We know it's action combat, but is there any more insight you can give us on that?
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, when we started this, we got the split body up and running. We did the videos, and Todd said to me, "He's like, can't we make it look better?" And I go, "That split body, you as a player, you have ultimate locomotion, and you can still attack. It's like a mech, right? And it just doesn't look good." Right? And so Todd challenged us to make it look better, and we're like, well, we didn't want to use the animation locking from games like Terra because it takes away control from the players, right? But we're like, you know, it just looks the best, and we all started playing it again to just remember it, and a lot of players were like, that is fantastic. So that's the path that we've started going down.
And we have largely re-swizzled on that one because we just weren't happy with it where it was before. So
he wasn't happy with the way.
It wasn't good enough.
Right? I mean,
we're gonna do that again. It wasn't good enough.
And this is a great spot because right at the beginning of a project, you can make big giant swizzles like this. Right? A year into development, you can't go, hey guys, we're gonna pull apart the whole combat system and start over again. So we got a lot of great feedback on the forums right off the bat. The forums are pretty invaluable for us. I'm sorry we can't respond to everything, but I mean, there's already, 115,000 posts up there? I mean, it's just, the traffic is rough to keep up with. But, in this case, we listen to a lot of the community at this point. So we're going to try and make it look really good. We're going to try some animal locks, and hopefully you'll see that later on in the year. And we can reevaluate. And
we have some great ideas for how to not lock you in without, like, allow them certain breakout points and things like that.
Yeah,
we're not just going to go lift somebody else's system.
Right.
You know, we're going to learn from it, use it as a base, and move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. A lot of people, since Terra is free to play, you can say, hey, just go drop into Terra. They're going to have an awful time right off the beginning, right? Their very early experience just isn't really that great. I hate to jump on another team like that, but.
But their combat's awesome.
But the combat is awesome.
For props to do, you know?
You get to this point where it's really awesome. It's just you have to walk uphill with no shoes for too long, in my opinion. So we're going to try and mitigate some of that by giving you a full kit of powers right off the bat, right? So you can start figuring out cool things like combos right from the beginning. Because again, we're not a level-based game,
All right, so I think
Yeah, and we're getting the
you're out of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Guys,
right.
thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate
Thank you,
it. It's been a joy to have you here. Those of you watching, if you're looking for another dose of Crowfall devs, they're actually immediately going over to our friends at the Crowns and Crows podcast, and you guys can head over to that channel, or you can stay here. We'll be hosting them here on the channel. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been a real joy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for
thanks
Good
for
luck with the end of the Kickstarter.
Absolutely. Have a great night, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.